like that. Okay, so anyway, it's the fasting mimicking diet, which can be an important component in our functional medicine toolbox. So the fasting mimicking diet is, well, it's a little bit what it says it is. It's a diet that mimics fasting, water fasting. So the body basically thinks it's on a water fast when you're following the fasting mimicking diet. And of course, what I'm going to cover here is some of the benefits from the diet. So the aim of the diet really is to support longevity, and the definition of longevity, as I've put in this graph, is lifespan on one side and health span on the other side. And then longevity ends up being the area under the curve. So we really want to have a long life, but we really want it to be good quality as well. So with the fasting mimicking diet, there are mechanisms of actions that can support a healthier life and a longer life. So that's what we are aiming for. So it was quite funny with Jane Fonda. She was talking about anti-aging and so on, and she was saying how we had been given a third act to our lives because our generation really lives 34 years longer than, our generation lives 34 years longer than our great-grandparents did. So, and we want those years to be good. We want us to be healthy. We want us to be strong. We don't want that third act to be an act of disease. So this guy, Dr. Walter Longo, who originally was studying music, but was very much interested in aging and why people live longer than others, basically because he's from Italy, a little town where there's a lot of people who grew old and became what's named centenarians, above 100 years, and even super centenarians, so maybe 110 years. And basically what pushed him was that he had to play some form of music that he didn't want to play. And then he decided, right, I want to study aging. And through this, he has studied cultures who live for a long time with no disease. He's been in South America, where there's some tribes where they actually don't grow that tall. Their IGF levels, so their insulin growth factor levels are low, but there is no really disease. So, he's been studying some of the mechanisms about IGF-1, what is that, and so on. And he's been looking into TOR and PKA that I'm going to cover a little bit with you as well.
Catherine, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
The screen, we're only seeing part of the slide.
Oh, right, thank you. What can I do? I'm going to stop sharing again, and then I'm going to do something as well. Thank you, Susa. I'm just going to do it the basic way and see how. Now?
Yes, now
whole screen.
Yes, whole screen, we can see now. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and Walter Longo also has written this book that you can get from Amazon or wherever, and that he's put in a lot of his research into that leads up to the fasting mimic, because it's not only looking into longevity per se, it's also looking into some of the research that has been done on fasting in relation to disease and autoimmune disease and so on. It's not, so it's leading up to the research that's going on now. So the basic research in regards to studying MS, or to study diabetes, or to study fasting in relation to cancer treatments as well. So it's a very interesting read for that. And then he's going through what he has found in regards to research diet and what is healthy lifestyle. And then I'm just going to promote down here at the bottom, because about a year ago I was in California, and I went to University of Southern California, which is the gerontology unit where Walter Longo is doing his research. And then I met Sebastian Brandthorst, because of course Walter Longo was in Europe when I was visiting America. And we did a podcast or an interview together where we're discussing some of the fundamentals in regards to fasting mimicking diet as well. And you can find it both on Apple Podcast, and you can find it on Spotify, and that's the title of it, and the podcast is called Healthy by Anne-Catherine. So that was the best name I could work out. So, but then let's move more into what aging actually is and the mechanisms in regards to aging that occurs. It's like a cellular degradation, you can say, that's working at different levels. Let's start with the chromosomes, just to start somewhere, where we have the telomeres that research is happening on, where they're looking at telomere length. And there's this theory that telomere length and aging is related. So the shorter the telomeres are, well, the shorter the life we have. A lot of like stress, nutrient deficiencies can impact the telomere length. So that's one area. The next one is epigenetic alterations. Of course, how the gene expression occurs in relation to the environment and how it can change in relation to the environment. So an unhealthy environment would then impact the genetic expression negatively. I'm just gonna unmute trying to mute all. I'm just trying to myself. I'm trying to mute
Okay, yeah.
Not now it happened. Okay, so the next part is loss of proteostasis. So that's basically the proteins, the whole folding and trafficking and reparation and so on of protein gets slower and gets more dysfunctional. Then there is a deregulation in the nutrient sensing pathways, the way we respond to food changes, our whole metabolism goes slower and so on. Then there is the mitochondrial dysfunction, that the mitochondria just gets slower. We get slower at producing ATP and so on. Then there is cellular senescence, which is the cells that are aging. And in that process, we start producing these like micro-inflammatory compounds. Some are actually call it inflammaging. Then there is this, the stem cells gets exhausted, meaning the whole renewal of cells happens slower. So we are slower at repairing ourselves. Then there is an altered communication between the cells, so even intercellular. And then we have the DNA that gets more unstable as well, where more like DNA damage can happen and disease in relation to that. Then there are, so that's just to really understand aging at a glance. Then there's things that we can do to prevent the aging. And then I would like to point out to the definition called hormetic stress. So like doing exercise and sport is a stress factor, but it's a good one. Of course, you can overdo it and it becomes negative, but exercise in a moderate manner and healthy manner is hormetic stress, and this hormetic stress actually allows for the body to become stronger, not just muscular stronger, but yeah, have more to work with cold baths, sauna, so cold temperatures and heat. Like sauna activates this like heat shock proteins that helps the protein repair better, and so on. And then fasting is also hormetic stress, and that's, I'm going to explain what the fasting does here. Then you may fasting, you may come across this terminology called senolytic agents. There's a lot of drugs that are working, that's being developed, but there's also like foods that naturally have senolytic agents in it. And it's basically compounds that support cellular death, and in order to get rid and shed unhealthy cells, maybe shed some of these these cells, inflammatory cells, in regarding to the cellular senescence that goes on, so that we can program and get rid of some of the bad, and then that way stay younger for longer. So then there's some different definitions in regards to fasting. There is the calorie restriction diet, which is about 30% less than calorie needs. There is the intermittent fasting, where you can do alternate days. That's 5-2 is an intermittent fasting. Then there's time restricted feeding, which is where you can fast for 16 hours and eat for 8 hours. And then there's water fasting, and then there's a fasting mimicking diet, where you eat about 50% less of your calorie requirements for about 5 to 7 days. And then there's different, this is based on some research and some publications where they compare the different fasting regimes with each other. So and some I mean, if the aim is to have a weight loss, well, then all these types of diets support a weight loss. Some diets don't support protection of the lean body mass. The fasting mimicking diet is very good for that, depending on how long time you do water fasting. Of course, if you do it for short spouts, then maybe it may support lean body mass protection. If you do it for longer, then no. They all reduce cholesterol. They all support healthy goals, but mainly the periodic, so the water fasting and the fasting mimicking diet support what's called rejuvenation and regeneration. And then of course there's like, when are you getting food and when are you not getting food? And clearly when you're water fasting, you're not, and when you have the intermittent fasting, you're not eating food either then. So there's pros and cons for this, for which diet to choose. But if you want so like the 5-2 diet is mainly like for weight loss and for cholesterol control and blood sugar control, and it works very well for that. But if you want the rejuvenation, the anti-aging, the regeneration, the longevity factor into it, you would have to work with water fasting or the fasting mimicking diet. So I'm going to go through some of the mechanisms of action behind the fasting. And so Walter Longo has identified several, or mainly 3 nutrient sensing pathways. So mechanisms of actions that's impacted by food. And one is the insulin-like growth factor 1, so the IGF-1. So where we secrete hormones from hypothalamus as a response to when we're eating. And then it stimulates the IGF-1, and we can build muscles. And if we really want to be bodybuilders and get strong and so on, we want to stimulate this. So we would eat lots of protein, and eat, well, and calories as well, in order to stimulate the IGF-1 for growth. Then when we are fasting, the IGF-1 is suppressed. And it's a balance, because we want the IGF-1 because we want to grow and develop, but we don't want to grow too much. Then there is the mTOR, which is the mechanistic target of rapamycin, which is also targeted in regards to some cancer treatments, in regards to some medication to slow down the cancer and work as a chemotherapy or toxin to the cancer cell. But it's impacted when we eat food as well, and especially leucine and methionine as proteins is stimulating the mTOR. So you have to look at the mTOR as a process that upregulates, and it helps create nucleotides. It helps DNA replication. It helps the fat metabolism. It's just really continuing, and the faster it goes, the older we go, kind of. So we want to down regulate it, because it's supporting the production of these also senescent cells and this inflammation going on in regards to aging. So sometimes it can be an idea to suppress it and stimulate what's called autophagy. So eating speeds up the mTOR process, not eating turns it down. So that's another mechanism of action relating to the fasting that can be impacted. Then there is the protein kinase A, which is a gene that's activated by carbohydrate intake, and when it's turned on, it turns up the volume, you can say, for gene transcription. And when that volume is turned up, we of course start producing more proteins, and we use the DNA quicker, and that can become a negative thing as well. And then when we eat less carbohydrates, less calories, we can turn down for the transcription, and that's proven to be a favorite thing as well, in regards to supporting longevity and cell repair and so on. Then, of course, we move into autophagy. So when we don't eat, we downregulate mTOR, we downregulate IGF-1, we downregulate pKa, and then we move into a stage of autophagy. And autophagy is this process where we inside the cell have these membranes that kind of cleans up inside the cell. It removes old organella and things that shouldn't be in the cell, and it excretes it and gets it out of the cell. So that's a very important process in regarding to supporting the body and cleaning up. And actually, there was a Nobel Prize that was given in 2016 on the discovery of autophagy. That just shows how important that one is. On the top of that, when we are fasting, we stimulate apoptosis, and apoptosis is this programmed cell death. And the theory is that when we are not eating, the cells that we are getting rid of are some of the less healthy cells, some of the cells that have aged, so some of the senescent cells, some of the maybe pre-cancer cells that we all have in the bodies, and maybe all pre-autoimmune cells, and so on. So the theory is that we shed that and get rid of that through apoptosis. So, and some of these so some of the focus on anti-aging and a healthy lifespan would be support these processes as well. Then already after 3 days of fasting, when we measure these circulating stem cells in blood, we can see that they start increasing already on day 3, and then even higher when we start eating again. So just to put it in easy terms here, you can say, well, if you eat a normal food, I don't know who this would be normal food too, but it's not how I eat normally. But if we eat more like a normal, perhaps more like a standard American diet, like standard Danish type diet and so on, we activate these nutrient sensing pathways, the IGF-1, the mTOR, the PKA, and we stimulate insulin production as well. And that's an unhealthy way of aging, you can say. Then if we want to create a more healthy way of aging, of course, we in the daily life would want to eat healthy, but we would spice that up with fasting. And that's where Walter Longo came into this, because you can say he's doing research into like how many people can we support in regards to fasting, and then taking away the negative sides from the water fasting, like like where you lose lean body mass. So then by putting in the 5-day fasting mimicking diet, then you reduce the activity of these nutrient sensing pathways, and that is believed to be a more optimized aging process or journey, you can say, because yeah, aging is a journey. So some of the research done, and I think I'm gonna just find them, they're open access, and then I'm gonna email them to you so that you have them as well and can go through them. But this was the first one, and it was you can say it was like a pilot study where they both looked into animals but also into humans, and they were looking at risk factors and biomarkers for aging, and mainly like diabetes and cardiovascular disease and cancer. They took 19 on the fasting mimicking diet and put them on 3 cycles. And 3 cycles means that they do fasting mimicking diet for 5 days, then they eat normally for 25 days, then they go on the diet again, and then they eat normal for 25 days, and then they go on the diet again. So that's 3 cycles. And then they measure on biomarkers before and after they have done this. And then they also had 19 controls. And the results was very promising. It was as they had hoped, you can say, like fasting glucose levels went down, ketone bodies went up, IGF went down, what's called IGF binding protein went up, and then body weight went down, trunk fat went down, the lean body mass, which is the restoration of muscles, stayed. C-reactive protein went down, and this marker down here on the bottom is stem cells. So during the fasting period, they go up and then they can go down after, but they were still higher than before. So that's a little bit interesting. So this study led up to a different study, or a larger study, which was then published in 2017 with more people included. So they had contacted 102 people and 100 consented, and they split them into 2 groups, one control diet and one started on the FMD. And then they went through this they didn't cross over, but the FMD cycles did their 3 cycles, and then the control diet started their FMD diet and then followed through. So the interesting thing here is that because the FMD diet, they did their 3 cycles, and then they were still waiting while the control group was doing their cycles, and then they did blood work and measurements. So basically after 6 cycles, but they had only done 3, and even so basically 2.5 months after they had stopped the 3 cycles, there was still benefits to be measured in the blood and in the measurements for weight and so on. So that's quite interesting as well when you look at it. So in this research or this publication, again, the stem cells went up during and went down afterwards, which is expected. Well, not necessarily expected, but it's beneficial that it goes up for sure. Cholesterol went down, C-reactive protein went down, body weight went down, abdominal fat went down, and lean body mass stayed and even got a little bit higher. IGF-1 went down, and blood pressure went down as well. So all in all, a good result. And of course, more research needs to be done and so on. And more research is being done. Right now, from what I understand, a lot of research is mainly focusing on how fasting can support disease and chronic diseases and autoimmune conditions, cancer, and so on. So we are waiting for those results before we can say that diets really can work for that. But just to sum up, on the 5 days, you start on day 1, and that's when you start the fasting state, and the body starts burning off the excessive calories and starting fat burning by moving into ketosis and so on. But it's also here that the autophagy starts working, and the apoptosis starts working, and even the visceral fat metabolism starts getting more active then. And then on day 3 to 4 is when this the stem cells starts being produced. So that's what they call cellular rejuvenation, and that of course continues until we start eating. And then it's like you can say, so like we're taking away food, and then the body is kind of waiting for food, and then it starts getting these stem cells ready, because when food comes, they can really produce and activate and so on. So it's the body is kind of preparing itself for when food is coming, so that it can be used for this rejuvenation and repairing and renewal in the body. In the research in some of the animals, so like they looked at some of the organs of mice, and they could see that the size of the organs would reduce by 30%. So mice only fast for 4 days, not 5 days like humans. But in those 4 days, the organs shrank, and then when they start eating again, they grow up again and grow bigger. So indicating that these bad cells, or well, we don't know if they're bad cells, but at least cells are disappearing, and then we get new cells back in there for the organ growth again. So that's the mechanism and theory that's worked upon in regards to shedding precancer cells, shedding autoimmune cells, and so on. And then hopefully then stem cells produce new healthy cells. So this is a little bit it's a little bit smart saying it this way, but I thought about taking it away from the slides, but I also kind of want to come in with my own inputs into this. So when I use the fasting mimicking diet for patients, especially those who, if someone has been like completely cool and they've done water fasting 10 times before they meet me and they like it, of course I'm just going to continue with that. But if I'm sitting with the patient who's never done fasting before, then I feel secure that this product that I'm recommending them has been used on thousands of people. It has been tested in research, and there was no one died, and for that matter, no adverse negative reactions were occurring. So these are some of the things that I can say to my patients. Well, it's only 5 days. You're still getting food. It's been developed at a university, and it's been researched very well. So it's clinically proven, and it has these benefits, positive benefits. It's not necessarily negative benefits. So I have that kind of to cover my back and to make them feel safe as well. because those of you who have tried doing fasting probably have this like on day 2 or something, and you just feel you're gonna die and you're maybe dizzy and all you want to do is go out and do a rage on the fridge. But you just remember, you can remind yourself that lots of people have done this before, and there is research behind it, so you can kind of feel safe that you're not gonna die right now. And so it gives strength to motivation and to continue doing the fasting for sure. So, but just to go more into the details with the product. So it's 5 days. On day 1, there is about 1100 calories in it, where 11 energy percentage is protein, and 46 is fat, and 43 are carbohydrates. So you actually get quite a lot of food on day 1. And then day 2 to 5, it's reduced to 770 calories with even less protein, and then less fat, and actually more carbohydrates. So it's not a ketogenic diet here. What promotes the ketone bodies and the production of the ketones is the lack of calories. And there's this debate, like those who's pro fasting mimicking diet and those who's pro like ketogenic diet. What is the true ketogenic diet? Is it a fasting mimicking diet or fasting, or is it the ketogenic diet? But anyway, there's always these research discussions going on around. So but it's not a low carb diet. The carbohydrates that are in there are with lots of fibers and beans and lentils and so on. So it's healthy carbohydrates that are in, though there is a little bit of honey in the bars. So, but it's primarily based, plant-based ingredients. The honey, of course, is not. And there was some gels, gelatin gels with some omega-3 oils in it as well. That's difficult to make plant-based as well. So, but yeah, it's healthy carbohydrates and healthy fats that's in it. So when you follow the diet, it's recommended that you drink, well, maybe not all the water you can, but enough water, and so that you are not dehydrated. And then you can use a little bit of salt. You can use a little bit of fresh herbs just to like spice up or maybe a little bit of lemon zest or something. If you feel that the food should, you need something else than what the food gives you as I use this word, organoleptic experience, the experience of food and taste and texture and so on. If a person is addicted to coffee and experience headaches or withdrawal from coffee, they can drink maybe a cup of coffee with the coffee, and then they're on the diet without the coffee. But it's okay to drink a cup of coffee, and it's probably more theoretically that you should not have the coffee. But some people get a little bit stressed by drinking coffee, and then that activates maybe some cortisol. And when the cortisol is higher, maybe the blood sugar goes up higher. So that's the theory as why it shouldn't be. But in practical matters, now it's basically just recommended that you can drink a cup of coffee per day. But it's always good, I would say, to try and not have coffee and break that have that fast, coffee fast as well. Maybe this is the time just to feel what it's like to not be with coffee, but you don't want to provoke headaches really. You can eat less than what's in the Prolon box, and meaning because you get 5 boxes, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. So what's in day 1, if you don't finish what you eat in day 1, you can't save it for day 2. And you can't save day 2 for day 3 either, and so on. So if there's something you didn't eat, it's just tough luck. You leave it in the box or throw it out. So it's not allowed to save for tomorrow. You can take your own supplement if needed. There is a little bit of omega-3 in, and there is like a little of a multivitamin that they give on certain timings. If you do take your own supplements, we of course don't know exactly what does your body respond as fasting as if it was water fasting if you're taking your supplements. We don't really know and how much supplements is it and so on. So perhaps avoid supplements for the 5 days, but if there is supplements people can't live without, I don't know, it could be some herbs for like hormonal balance or whatever, then for sure just stay on it. Just think about like how many nutrients and are we putting into the body. And like magnesium isn't, or just as an example, minerals it could be, isn't necessarily activating some of these nutrient sensing pathways, so the body probably still thinks it's fasting if you're taking some minerals per se. It's the calories, it's the protein, it's the carbohydrates that activates the nutrient sensing pathways. So then on day 6, that's when you have to start eating. And yeah, it's recommended to eat vegetables and fruit and nuts and beans and lentils. So basically what's in the Prolon, but just in bigger amounts and in fresh versions and so on. So when I do my fasting, and a lot when we do fasting at Nordic, we start with what we call the Nordic smoothie, which is a smoothie with lots of good supplements in, and vegetables, and maybe some berries and so on, and probiotics and so on as well. So that's the way it's liquid, and the stomach is just getting used to getting a little bit more volume and so on. But I must say that when people start eating, they're looking forward to eating fish, they're looking forward to steamed broccoli or steamed cabbage and so on. It's healthy foods that they're really looking forward to. So being on this fast for 5 days, it's not like crap food that people want to go on through. It's real food that they're craving. So then, then you move on to normal food. But what is normal food? And that's, of course, where you as practitioners can impact your patients. How do you want them to eat? How do you want to support how they eat in between? The research that I covered before, they just eat normal in between. So they're just doing the Prolon. And then if they're eating Coke or a steak or whatever, normally that's what they continue doing in between. But because we're sitting with patients, we can also impact how they eat in between doing Prolon. So, and then what I'm just putting up here is some of the stuff that Walter Longo put in his book, really. So he's recommending a Mediterranean diet where it's still mainly plant-based food with a low protein intake, mainly from fish and legumes. And the protein intake is down to 10 energy percent. So that's 0.7 or 0.75 grams per kilo normal body weight. I know the Danish diet recommendations, or the Nordic dietary recommendations, is up on 0.8. So that's a little bit higher. And then he says, well, if you're eating protein, do a 30 gram of protein dose after weightlifting for the stimulation of the mTOR, but then don't necessarily stimulate it the rest of the day. And then fat, again, from fish and plants, and carbohydrates, where 100 grams is starch. And then he says limit the alcohol and to 0 if there is like a familiar risk of cancer related to alcohol intake. And he recommends eating breakfast, and that's, of course, like, you do what you think is, I'm just raising up what he's saying. And if you also encourage like an 8-16, then maybe it's not breakfast that you want to support your patients with. But it's, I think that's just my take on it. Like those who don't eat breakfast are perhaps evening eaters, and we know that evening eating is possibly related to more disease, cardiovascular disease, and lifestyle problems. So maybe that's why he's saying, well, eat breakfast, because then maybe you don't eat that much in the evening. So it's not that clear from what I could get out of it. Then he suggests eat for 11 to 12 hours, but that's because there is some research that if you fast for more than 13 hours, there are some who can develop bile stones, and that can be pretty painful. He allows coffee, and again, don't eat at night because it increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. And then how often to do Prolon within. So basically what he says is like, if you have a person who's overweight, you can continue doing Prolon every month until the person is at normal weight, and then maybe you can do it every 3, every 4, every 6 months, to really just continue the positive development that has been occurring. So then Prolon is not for everyone. So be considerate in regards to some symptoms that people can get while they're on it. And if they already have it, maybe it's not now to do Prolon. So, but dizziness is quite normal to experience that when you don't get the calories that you normally get. Fatigue and feeling cold, headaches, especially after stopping coffee, but also not, I mean, if you don't have withdrawal problems from coffee, you can still get headaches. Feeling dry in the mouth, and like poor memory and concentration. So like it just goes a little bit slow. You just have to think a little bit like where am I, or what are we talking about, and so on. It's quite interesting because we in the company we do a lot of fasting, and there is this like, oh, I'm on Prolon, so like bear with me a little bit, and then okay, we're having more patience, and because we know how things are a little bit slower on day 3 or 5, and some experience pain in the muscles. I have had some where it's been really severe pain, and then it was a woman, and then she just took some magnesium and it calmed down, and then it was over. Exactly what that is, I don't know, but maybe getting rid of some inflammation or something in the body. And then be careful with, do the exercise that you normally do, but don't overdo it. So if you're used to cycling 7 kilometers to work and back again, continue doing it. But don't suddenly cycle 145 kilometers because you certainly can or something. Just be careful a little bit with exercise. Also sauna, you can get dizzy, and you can get even dizzier in a sauna and so on. And then handling heavy machinery and so on, be careful. But what's very important here is also if people are on medication, and especially medication that's lowering blood sugar. So metformin, of course, insulin, because we don't want people to go hypoglycemic and and die. So really, you have to discuss this with the patient, and if you are not the doctor, then the patient discusses it with their doctor if Prolon is the right thing to do for them. Then, of course, people under 18, because they are children. Though my son, I think he was 17 when was he even 16? He wanted to do it, and I was doing it with him. And yeah, that was a challenge, but that was of his own free will. It was certainly not me putting pressure on him. And then, of course, older people, and old is the definition above 65, which is a little bit unfair. But at the age of 65, and we can't really run away from this, but at that age is when these aging processes are just more powerful or more expressed. We do need more protein when we are older in order to keep the lean body mass and so on. And if people are weak in general and have serious diseases and so on. Pregnant women and those who are breastfeeding, not recommended either. Those with allergies to some of the ingredients in it, so there's nuts in it. So it's gluten-free, it's dairy-free, but yeah, if there is allergies towards some of the foods, then it's better to avoid it. And then, of course, if someone is underweight and have a BMI under 18, it's recommended to not do it. And then if people have syncope or other serious diseases or conditions, then check with the doctor. And again, the medication is important to check that they're not on metformin, and you should at the same time start them on Prolon. Then questions comes up like, and that's again because we would be as clinicians, we would sit with the patients and discuss the situation and so on. And this is not something that's this is more my own thinking, that if I have a patient who has adrenal fatigue, whatever that is, but at least where, or stress or feel exhausted, just tired in general, burned out, then you might want to use it, but you may also not want to use it. So just it's not necessarily for everyone, but just take that into discussion and maybe try it once, and if it was not good for them, don't recommend it again necessarily. And then I would say that women on their moon cycle or who's menstruating, if they had a tendency to PMS and then go on Prolon or fasting mimicking diet at the same time, it can be hard. So more emotionally hard, or so that's of course like when the timing, when is it best to do it? There can be things like that to consider. And yeah, like if you have a deadline in front of you and doing Prolon at the same time, just talk about the timing with the patients as well as when is the best time to do it. I have personally traveled whilst doing it. It's possible, it's fine. I can go to work when I've been doing it, but I can also have a day at home. So I preferably start on a Sunday and then go through the week when I do the fasting, and have a day working at home or two. And then, but otherwise I have been going to work and seeing patients and so on. It takes my focus away from some of the focus on the eating. So, but there is another consideration here, and because I've had some questions coming up, like, can I use it for someone with Alzheimer's? Can I use it for preventing diseases, autoimmune conditions, and so on? And really, that's, I think, read the Valsalongo book, and then you have to make the call. The research isn't there to support Prolon yet, so the company is not going out and saying you can use it for treating or preventing a disease. So you really have to take the call on that and be responsible practitioner and decide whether to or not. So I don't really want to go too deep into that. And there is situation, like I said, like my son wanted to do it. He had seen his parents doing it, and then that was fine, and we were looking after him and so on. And there's people who don't, at the age of 67, don't consider them as old, so they might want to do it, and they're strong and they have a lot of muscles, and I mean, but it's a question of following up and having be close and will be supported. So those are just some of my considerations here. I'm just checking up on some of the questions, but I'll come to those later. So I'm just going to give you 2 cases of my own, and there's lots of cases out there, and some of you have probably been using it on your patients and so on as well. So I had a woman of 32 years old, and she was 109 kilos, and she had a really unhealthy relationship with food. So basically she would try and lose weight, and the minute she had like a bite of a pizza or something like that, then it wouldn't matter, all of it, and then she would just adding pizza and junk food, and she would gain all the weight that she had done. So she really couldn't control, either she was on a diet or she was just going all in, eating everything she could get hold of. And she had been following other dietitians' advice and recommendations in regards to weight loss, but it happened. This thing happened all the time. That either she was on the diet or she was off the diet completely, excuse me. So we tried the fasting mimicking diet with her, and she was really excited, and it just was really, really easy for her, because it was quite easy for her to be on the diet. And then we spoke about how she should eat in between the cycles, which was healthy and like discussed a little bit earlier. And then she went on Prolon again, and slowly she found out, because she went back on Prolon again and the food was healthy and so on. And every time she went to a party or had a glass of wine and had that bite of pizza and so on, she had the contact with me, so that I knew that I was there following her in the back, and she had the Prolon to go on to in a few weeks' time again. So she kind of stopped having that weird relationship that it just all went pear-shaped when she had broken the diet because she went to a party or something. So that's one. And she's still losing weight, and she's down to 83 kilos, and has experienced longer periods also, like where she didn't do Prolon every 25 days because she had to travel, and there was something with her family and so on. But she learned that, oh, there's a tool I can go back to. She's broken this weird relationship that she had with food. And that's actually a little bit of the interesting thing with Prolon, because with food we need it, but we also don't need too much, and we need the healthy stuff and not the unhealthy stuff. So what's interesting with Prolon is that you, for those 5 days, you're getting food, but you still take the focus away from buying food. So grocery shopping, you take the focus away from cooking. So basically you're not really standing with your face into the fridge for 5 days, like just looking for something because you're a little bit bored or whatever it could be. So it takes away that focus, and a lot of people are like saying, well, I realize that I'm addicted to food, but this is kind of helping me breaking the addiction, or it's making me control my eating habits better after doing this experience. And the same thing actually happened to this guy that I had in the clinic, who came to the clinic because it was time to anti-age. He felt unhealthy, tired, unfit, and stressed, and he didn't have much focus on food, and he knew he had to, and so he was kind of demotivated and so on. And then we've done also different laboratory tests on him, and looking at different areas just to like wamp him up, you can say. But we used fasting mimicking diet also to kickstart this healthier lifestyle, really, because it is this like behavior tool as well, where you can learn what's healthy, and how does my body feel when I'm not stuffing myself too much and so on. So he really loves it, and he keeps coming back for the boxes, and uses that, and like then he has a break, and then he might do 3, or he may just do 1 now and then focusing on a healthy lifestyle in between then as well. So it wasn't just Prolon, it was also like doing lab tests on him and supporting him with different nutrients and other lifestyle considerations that way, especially in relation to stress as well. And then I don't necessarily want to, it's not everybody who fits with Prolon. Again, if you are highly stressed and you go on Prolon, then your body may get even more stressed, and more cortisol may produce, and that is not necessarily a good thing. So when we evaluate the person who is going to go on Prolon, we just have to take that into consideration as well. So I'm just going to click that over. I just want to also highlight that because some of these markers that I've mentioned, you can measure, and there is this test called cardiometabolic plus IGF-1 in our system, where you get the fasting insulin high sensitive C-reactive protein, hemoglobin A1C, triglyceride, cholesterol, HDL, LDL, and VLDL. And it's a blood spot, so you don't necessarily need to go to the doctor and have a blood draw. So that's quite easy to work with, and it's quite fun to do it before and after. And but I would say if someone has, let's say they have normal IGF-1s before they start on Prolon, it's not going to drop further. Then it stays normal, you can say. The same with cholesterol and so on. And if they have normal levels, it's probably going to stay the same. It's more like if you have a patient where you know it's high, it's nice to follow up because it's a motivational tool to support them to continue or to do 3 cycles again later or whatever. So just the other tool to follow up with, that it's not just, well, try it and see how it works, but try it and see how your biochemistry is actually responding to the diet, as well as weight and blood pressure and so on. So if I've made you hungry for trying it, then the company has offered us a very special price, and it only lasts for 1 week, and it's only one-time use only, and you can get 3 boxes per person, and then the price is £99. So, and the discount code is Prolon webinar, and we will send that out in the post-webinar mail as well. That should go out to you tomorrow. And you just go in, log in as a practitioner, and then you order to yourself. So you choose practitioner pay, and then you put in the Prolon, the discount code Prolon webinar, and then you get it at that very good price. So I should have had like a co-host with me myself, so I've been looking, but I can see Susa has helped me quite a lot here.
Yeah, I've been taking the role of co-host. I'm answering here, so.
Thank you, Susa. Excellent. Yeah, so regards to some of the foods that can aggravate SIBO and so on. And yeah, so what can happen is that, because there is quite a lot of inulin in the food as well. So maybe some people go a little bit more gassy for some days, but on day 4 and 5, the stomach goes a lot more flat. And there is actually, Sebastian Brandhorst has been doing some research again into mice, but in regards to inflammatory bowel conditions and how Prolon, the fasting mimicking diet, actually can support and lower the inflammatory state. So that might be quite interesting research. Of course, it's not in humans, but from my clinical experience, then it can irritate a little, but then because maybe there's less food, or because this inulin just feeds the good bacteria, it balances out. I haven't done a Prolon stool test trial. Maybe we should do that on someone. That could be quite interesting. So why so much carbs in the diet? Well, they've just found out that combination works. I mean, they've done this diet over and over and over again to try and find the right combination. So each food they have chosen to put into it, each of the ingredients they have chosen to put into it, is because it stimulates this, that the body thinks it's fasting. It stimulates autophagy. So the teas, there is a hibiscus tea, and it's been chosen because it has these powers in order to support some of the fasting mechanisms of action. So, and again, the aim wasn't to produce like a ketogenic diet, it was to produce a fasting mimicking diet. And this is what research, and if you're on a ketogenic diet, there is a tendency that you end up eating a little bit more protein, and then that would stimulate the IGF-1. So there's been put a lot of research into this as to how to combine the foods and so on. So yes, slides will be sent. Yeah, I think that's we've come to the end of this talk. I'm just gonna see if I can see any of you at least, because I clicked you all off, so it's nice to see some faces and smiley faces as well. So I hope, I mean, you would have to send me questions afterwards if there's been questions that I have overseen, or if you felt that I didn't see it, then it's just because I haven't looking at the questions while I have been talking. But you can send them on an email if needed, or and then we will try and support you the best we can based on your email. So, but yeah, check it out yourself and look out for the email tomorrow, hopefully with the recordings. I had some challenges yesterday when I was doing some Danish webinar with some practitioners there, that it's the recording is still loading in the system. So I'm on to get some help, and I hope that's not going to happen this time. So, and then, yeah, the last thing again, remember to sign up for the Tom Fabian talk next Thursday, or at least put it into your calendar. And you can put the Thursday after again into your calendar, because I have identified someone who's going to talk, and we're just going to identify what the topic is going to be about, but I'm sure it's going to be exciting. So yeah, but so plot the time and the, well, yeah, the time and the date and the place at your home in your calendar, so you are ready to join, and then look out for the invitations. And then yeah, I think that's more or less it. Tom Fabian, Pathogens, Opportunists, and Gut Health Insight from GI MEP. It's going to be. So I'm just going to come up here. So yeah, I hope to see you then, and take care, everyone at home. Stay safe, and yeah, we'll be in touch.